Discover how to heal your life and business in today's episode with Jim Marshall. Now, Jim Marshall has devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multiple dimensions of human potential and development. So, Jim, tell us, how can entrepreneurs heal their lives and their businesses? Heal podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever, shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Okay, well, I should first say, to identify myself, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. What Septemics is, but to answer your question, this system is very easy for people to use to heal their lives and their businesses. And I'll show you how to do that.
Great. So tell us more specifically, what can I do to heal my life and my business?
Well, the first thing you should do is get the book and read it, because it gives you very specific knowledge about people that will enhance your understanding of whomever you're dealing with, for better. And as a result of this, since we are all dealing with people, all of your goals and purposes will be fostered. In other words, achieve your goals faster and easier. Let me explain a little bit about what Septemics is. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word Septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or hierarchies, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and together they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, situation, difficulty that any person has regarding people can successfully be answered by one or more of these scales. I'll give you an example of how this works, okay? I have worked out the spectrum of 35 different areas of, in other words, these actually exist in the same way that Newton's 3 laws of motion exist, or in the same way that the periodic table exists. Now, because of that, it's easy to understand this. It's not counterintuitive. So, for example, let's say you have a guy, he's been dating her 2 years. And wouldn't it be smart to ask, why does this person want to marry me? By getting married. That's a big choice. That's a reasonable question to ask. Now, I'm not saying ask in the book. There's a scale of motivation. So this guy knows this woman. So when he looks at the scale, what's going to happen is he will find a bracket in a matter of seconds. Meaning he'll say something like, oh, well, I can see she's definitely not 5 or 6. See, he gets it down to 5 instead of 7. See? And then, because he knows he'll look at it and say, oh, okay, I can see she's at level 1. Level 1 on the scale of motivation is love. That's the best motivation of all. So let's set the date. But maybe when he does this, he says, now that I think about it, I think she wants to marry me because I drive a Maserati, I fly my own Learjet, I have a 60-foot yacht, I live in a $10 million condo, $8 million in the back. See, that is a different motivation. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's different. So what he does with that is up to him. He could say, well, okay, yeah, I'm for my money. But, this is a wonderful person. I really, so I'm going to marry. That could happen. But another thing is, this is a gold digger. I don't want to marry a gold digger. And they break up. Now, in that second case, you might think he's going to be upset, and you would be wrong. He won't. He will be relieved. He will say, thank you, Lily, for showing me this book. I dodged a bullet. So that's a very typical example of how you could use this to enhance your life. to heal your life. So this guy gets out of this relationship with this woman who's the gold digger. Now he can look for somebody for himself. See, he's forewarned about it now. Now, every time you use this material, you have an insight. So this is like a fruitful source of insight. So these scales have an insight. So let's say you're thinking about the scale of control. She's a level 5 on the scale of control. Why she does this, and this. Now, you just made a better relationship with your mother because you understand her better. So this is really user-friendly. And let's take the business. There's a scale of management. I give you these 7 basic functions of management for managing anything. And so anybody who manages anything, which is most of us, is going to look at this and say, wow, yeah, I see how this works because it's natural law. So that's sort of what this is about. They get it. It works. It changes people's lives.
Okay, so for people that haven't read the book, what could you tell them started to heal their lives and businesses aside from reading your book?
I think a tip that I learned a long time ago that has, which is don't focus on the barriers. Focus on the goals. Many people sabotage themselves by focusing on barriers. The world is hard enough without doing that. So, for example, a person is focused on, I'm too short, or I'm black, or I didn't graduate high school. See, these are barriers. Don't do that. Focus on the goal, whatever. Now, you can't ignore the barriers. You have to know that they're there, but don't focus on that. Successful people focus on the goals. If you listen to Elon Musk, in all of his endeavors, he's focused on the goals. Barriers come up, he just handles them. That's not what he's.
Thank you. Now, for people who want to heal, for example, their anger, do you have anything in the book that entrepreneurs feel to start healing their anger so they can start to feel motivated and to have more freedom?
Yes. You see, every person is at some level on every one of these scales. So when you spot the person, you understand them. And this can be done across 35 axes. So that completely undercuts any type of anger, because when you understand something, all of that negative emotion just evanesces because you know what you're looking at. See, all of the negative emotions that people have are always corresponding to not understanding things. So, a guy reads this book and he gets down to level 5 and says, oh, that's my mother-in-law. That's exactly how she is. She's at level 5. Well, I don't know this guy's mother-in-law. How did I get that? Because it's natural law. And I figured this out and wrote it down so people use it. So if you just use your negative emotions, just go away. I've gotten to a point where I simply do not get upset, worried, angry, irritated, et cetera, because I understand people well. I know looking at with people, it's not hard to use this material. And so you don't have that uncontrollable emotion that you have when you don't understand what's going on.
Thank you. Now, imagine, for example, I'm angry at my team for making mistakes. So imagine say that instead of publishing this podcast with your name, Jim Marshall, they would put in Jam Marshall or Marshall with a single L, right? If I was to not notice that, you would see that and you'd be like, okay, my name is not that. Right. But the thing is, before it reaches there, like, it annoys me so much to see the small, grammatical errors, because I'm already thinking about how you might feel when you see that. And also because it's so important that I produce quality work and I'm focused on excellence.
Right.
And the other thing is, for example, let's say for producing this podcast, you have to have like the thumbnail, and then you have to have like your, like an overlay over this podcast to make it look even more glamorous. And then there's the text, right? So there could be multiple errors in the text. So let's say you appear as Jim Marshall in part of the text, and then there's someone else's link. Let's say Pedro's LinkedIn instead of yours, right? So, I mean, for the most part, they're doing great. Okay. But I would say in 5% of the cases, there's these tiny errors that drive me absolutely insane. Now, let's say if I looked into your book and I saw that they are a scale of, of course, let's say if I did, and if I knew that the cause of them do X, Y, and Z, that wouldn't change how I feel. At least I don't think so. Like, what would you have me do in order to master the situation a bit better and to not get angry the way that I'm getting angry every time it happens?
Well, it sounds like you need a psychotherapist. But that aside, if you had used the book, you wouldn't result. You have somebody who worked for you, right? And you analyze that person, and you know exactly who that person, you know what to expect. You see, using this book absolutely prevents catastrophes, dilemmas, bankruptcies, divorces, indictments, fistfights, etc. Because if someone is a downscale person, you can spot it. This is very specific. So you could say, oh, this is somebody who is not good in this area of life. So I might not want her to do that job. Or this is somebody who I might not want all. So it enables you to spot the upscale people and get them on your team, and spot the downscale people and get them off your team, because this is natural law. It's just like the difference between a rose and a tulip. If you don't want to cut your hands, don't mess with roses because they have thorns. Grow tulips instead. If you don't mind thorns, or you can wear gloves, that's okay. See, then you can. But you have to be able to know the difference between the two. Now, you probably do already, but with people, most people do not know what they're looking at with people. And this gives you to understand exactly who and what this person is.
Okay, so let's say I understand this person's, pros and cons. I understand they're not perfect. And for the most part, they do a good job. And I understand if I was to hire someone who was a lot more expensive, maybe they would do, 1% better job. I don't think that, because you can say everybody makes mistakes, maybe some people are less likely to, but, people who do graphic design, maybe they're not so good at the language aspect and the grammar and so on. So you would normally, in a normal team, you would have like multiple people doing that. It's like I understand limitations of having one person do that and then just me chucking it. Okay. But it's like I understand as well, like I don't have like 10 times bigger budget to do the same work. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how would you recommend that I am my life, this anger, knowing this particular situation? Because so far we've heard, okay, read my book. But what I'm saying is, do you have a specific that you can recommend to me and other entrepreneurs that are dealing with anger, aside from, knowing the kind of person that you're dealing with?
Well, the thing about Septemics is that it goes both ways. You can analyze yourself on it and understand yourself better. And every time you do that, you have more clarity about what's going on in your life and in your mind. And it reduces the likelihood that you're going to have any negative affect because you are clear on what's going on. For example, when I was a young man, this data didn't exist because and I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes. Now, does not happen, cannot happen, will not happen, because I understand what's going on. So I can look at a guy and see he's at either a high level or a low level, and that tells me that context. So if you were to analyze yourself across all 35 scales, you would be greatly clarified. Mm-hmm. So when you have mental clarity, negative emotion is reduced, mental clarity, because a person never knows that. He thinks he knows why he's upset. I have proven this for 40 years because I get a client come in. When I get him to spot what he's actually upset about, stops being upset, just like that.
Okay.
So it's about, if you have enough knowledge, you're not going to get upset. You're not going to worry because you have this mental clarity that makes everything easy for you to deal with.
Thank you. So, for example, imagine that that you can say the source of my anger is that perhaps when I was young, I was told off for a lot of things. Is that at all related? And then I kind of grew up being a perfectionist. I'm expecting like to create perfect or excellent products and services. I'm expecting it of my team. I'm expecting it of myself, and I'm very hard on myself. Does that mean like my understanding in that way? Does that change at all how I would react to this exact situation?
When you say, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me here. Just say your last sentence again.
Okay, so let's say that if I knew what triggered this kind of anger,
right,
that changed my reaction to it, and
yes,
enough to release or completely annihilate my anger.
Well, I don't know about completely annihilate, because that's a very big statement. But generally, what happens in using Septemics is, understand something, you get this insight. It's an uplifting moment. And so you know who you are, and you do the same thing with other people. So, for example, like I have a client, very smart, very successful. This person has trouble making choice. There's a scale of choice. So I know not to give this guy choices because we'll be there all day. You know, I'm not going to say to him, what would you like for dinner? We'll be there for an hour. So tiptoe around it. I say, okay, we're going to go out for Italian food. See, because I know he likes Italian food. Okay, so when you know where a person is on these various scales, what you're dealing with, and you can tiptoe around the difficult parts, and you can strengthen the strong parts. So if you have somebody who's is high on the scale of equanimity, a person who's not going to easily get upset or worried, because that's what equanimity is. So that's somebody who you can talk to, know that they're not going to come apart because they have equanimity. There are other people who have lower on the scale of equanimity, and you can identify, that person, if you go, because he lacks equanimity. But of course, this is 35 axes, so there's always one that's going to be relevant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell us about these 35 axes of metrics that you that every person can be measured by.
Okay, I'm going to just tell you the names of the 35 scales because that tells you exactly what subject matter is addressed in the book. Okay, 24 of these scales I call individual scales, meaning they apply to an individual person. Mm-hmm. And 11 apply to groups, so they call group scales. These are the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal choice. Excuse me, I read that wrong. The scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically change the life of the person.
Okay, so let's take the scale of conflict. How would understanding where you are there, how would understanding where you are on that metric, how would that kind of your change of behavior in terms of understanding yourself and in terms of you?
An insight. Let me turn to the scale of conflict so I can address this for you. Okay, so lowest level of the scale is no conflict possible. This person is in denial. He can't have a conflict. This is like a psycho in an insane asylum. There's no conflict because he's in denial. He doesn't make any mistake. Up from that is defeated. See, that's not as bad. A defeated person, he's been defeated, so he knows, okay, I've been defeated. That's different from no conflict possible. Up from that is 5, which is losing. When you are losing in a conflict, that's a state of struggle. Up from that is stalemate, which is a state of equilibrium as regarding conflict. Right? You have a conflict in a stalemate, like the way World War I was for several years. Winning is level 3. That's where you're winning in the conflict. That's what we call success. Up from that is victorious. So you're in a position of dominance. You've already succeeded. See, the conflict is there, but you're victorious relative to this conflict. And the highest level is no need for conflict. That is a peaceful person. You can't get this guy into a fight or into an argument. He has no need for conflict. You know, some people are easy into conflict. And so when you look at where you are on the scale, you see exactly where you are and you have an insight. So let's say you have a husband. I don't even know if you have a husband, but if you do, you're having a conflict and you look at this. Oh, where is this? Oh, I see. We're at a stalemate. Huh. See, nobody's winning and nobody's losing. That will give you some insight into what's going on in the relationship. And it will enable you to get a grip on it because the next level up is winning. So one of the actions, you can only move to an adjacent level. It is completely impossible to skip a level. Or you're either going to go to 3. If it gets worse, you're going to go to 5. If it gets better, you're going to go to 3. So, okay, so I'm going to move this up to winning. Now, how you go about that is facilitated by that you're in a stalemate. So a person may not realize he's in a stalemate. So when you use any one of these skills, you have an insight, and that in specific context. So you say, oh, that's what's going on. And then you understand it a little bit better. So if you are having a conflict with your husband, you could go to another scale of relationships. This relationship on the scale, see? And when you find, you'll say, we're at level 5. That's not so great. That's near the bottom of the scale. And then you could target moving up to level 4. So this is very user-friendly and very specific.
Okay, so let's take an example of a narcissistic client who, let's say, that is in the phase of not accepting conflict even exists, in the sense that anytime any potential conflict could arise, even if you were to say, okay, I'm displeased about this, displeased about that, about your behavior, you're coming late, you're not coming to the meeting, you're not letting me know you're not going to come, all these sort of things. And he will just basically ignore anything to kind of let the air kind of evaporate and create space, hoping you'll forget, and then comes back as if nothing happened within a few days. We're good. Everything's perfect. What would you have me do there, for example?
Get that person out of your life. That person is going to make a mess. Anytime you find somebody who's at the bottom of any, that's the dregs of society. So that can actually spot a person as being at the bottom. I do this all the time because I meet a lot of people. I say, this guy's, he's at level 6 on the scale. Thank you very much. We're done. Let me tell you a story, right? Like a few months ago, I'm a single guy. I met this beautiful blonde, and we were very interested in one another. So we're going through all the preliminary stuff like, what do you like to do in your spare time? Little conversations. What hours do you work? All that stuff. So we had 6 or 8 of those conversations. And I was, she's low on this scale. And then we had another conversation scale. And then we had another conversation. She's low on this scale. After a while, I said, am I crazy? I'm not going to deal with this. I dismissed her. I said, she was shocked. because this woman was so beautiful. I'm sure I'm the first guy who ever did that to her. But I could see she will. Guys would not have had that insight. They would have jumped right in it and wound up regretting it 3 months later and had a train wreck. So I gave myself a lot of trouble by getting myself out. Yes, beautiful. Yes, and all of that. But her behavior, her mindset was at or near the bottom of many of these. If I find somebody at or near the bottom of 3 or 4 different scales, we're done. Now, if it's somebody you can't, like your mother, then it tells you when you come to that area, you have to tiptoe around it. And I'll give you a beautiful guy, love the guy, successful person, beautiful family, et cetera, right? But he's what I would call a political extremist. So I know this. So when that comes up, I just tiptoe around it. I'm not going to let that wreck our relationship. So look, I have 3 sisters. 2 of them are conservatives and one's a liberal. I get along great with all of them. You know why? I don't let it be an impediment. Oh, okay, she's bringing up this election. I know she's upset about it. Just we go on to something. Oh, how's Uncle Joe? Have you seen him lately? Just find it. But before you can go around and know what the lay of the land is, and that's what this gives you about people. So I'm going to put it to you this way. Before I discovered Septemics, I was a successful human development engineer. I have an engineering background. So I understand people the way an aeronautical engineer understands airplanes, the way an automotive engineer understands automobiles, the way a chemical engineer understands chemicals. That is my area of expertise. So I understand people very well, and it led me to discovering this, which is natural law. And just observed it and wrote it down. And eventually I realized I had something big here. And some version of this book has existed for 29 years. So I've been watching people use this. People get this.
Thank you. For entrepreneurs that struggle with listening, people that you can't really get rid of because they're in your life, okay? Mm-hmm. And let's say you have a mother or parent or it's in your life close by that, let's say you want to talk to them. Every time you try to talk to them, they don't listen to anything you say. Or if they do, kind of very selectively do, and they're just waiting for you to stop so that they can barge in and kind of and say whatever they want. They keep interrupting. What would you say there to be able to do to heal that relationship?
There is a scale of communication. That one, if you master it, will completely change your life because it will make you a master of communication. And you could show it to her. There are drills. There are 7 levels of communication, and all of them have to be present to have communication, okay? They're in a sequence and on how to develop each of those 7 levels. So you could share this with her, get her to read it, help her understand it, get her to do the drills and her communication, because this is natural law. She'll say, oh, I see. Before I express myself, I have to first be present. And then after I'm present, then I have to inspect. And then after I inspect, I have to maintain my poise. Then I have to encourage the person. That's level 5. And then you get to level 6, which is expression. So there's a lot that goes into communication that has nothing to do with talking. And that's all explained in that scale. If she can read English, you could share this with her and you could get her to improve her communication skills. Also, communication skills, and you could sort of steer the conversation in a way that corrects for it. I do this all the time. I see this as not doing one of the 7 skills, and I can sort of direct it in such a way as to address that. Like if I have a student who is not maintaining his poise, that's level 3, that's a problem, okay? And so I'll broach the subject. I see that when you're not maintaining your poise. So what's that? Have him read it, see? And when he reads it, he's going to say, oh, yeah, this makes sense to me. That's what people say when they read this. Oh, I get it. See, and then it's not hard to get them to do it. So you could correct it in your mother, but also just knowing it yourself, you could correct it somewhat.
Thank you. But imagine that this person doesn't listen to anything you say. So how can you even get through to kind of teach her this new style of communication? You can say, yeah, okay, read my book. But it comes to, okay, these people don't want to read, and these people don't want to invest in themselves. They even think that they have a problem they need to work on. Because they're not going to take the time to even listen to what you tell them if you do this, because they're not even going to listen to that. So even if I was to like tell you, okay, I think that I need attention right now for something, they would be like cutting even that. So how to, read the book. And there are people who don't like to read books because they just don't want to put in the time. And there are also people that like to read books because they prefer to experience it kinesthetically and so on.
If you master it, you can control the situation. I've dealt with people like that, okay? But I see exactly what's going on. I've dealt with people like the person you're describing, sort of the way that it's optimal. Now, you're not going to get everything you want out of a person like that. But if a person is completely unwilling to listen to anything you have to say, there is no communication. So what is the point?
Thank you. But imagine you have to have that person in your life, like your parents, your siblings, or.
Right. But if you understand yourself what's going on, it won't bother you. It won't be a problem for you. You'll say, oh yeah, this person is a narcissist. And no matter what you say, it's all going to be about them. And so you're fine with it. It doesn't bother you because you understand the mechanics of it.
Okay, so tell us about or a few case studies of entrepreneurs or people that have used this method, and how knowing who they were on a certain scale of communication, of conflict, and all the other stuff, how did knowing that change the relationship with other people?
Okay, so you're asking me to go through my past and situation?
Some case studies of perhaps entrepreneurs or people you have worked with who have read your book or who know about this method that you are talking about, how knowing that and implementing it in their lives, how that...
Well, to tell you the truth...
Relationships.
To tell you the truth, I've spoken to so many people that it's. I don't think I could pick one out. I mean, what I remember is people telling me, "This is great. My marriage is better. My business is better." And that's sort of what I hear a lot. I don't really get a lot of people coming to me and parsing it that way. If you fix something, you move on. You see, you move on. So I see these manifestations in people, and therefore I understand exactly what they're about, and I know how to handle them. So it's not a problem for me. It's just like, if you treat a cat like a dog, you're going to have trouble. You have to know cats are different from dogs. Dogs like to be treated a certain way. So if you don't know that, you're going to have trouble. See, you have to know. So look, if you invited me to your house and said, Jim, I want to show you my garden. So I go over and I say, oh, Lily has tulips, roses, hydrangeas, irises, peonies. So I'm analyzing it because I know flowers. Now, if you bring a 5-year-old kid into that same garden, he's going to say nothing more than, these are pretty and they smell nice. That's all he knows. Most of us are like that kid as regards people. They don't know which one is a chrysanthemum and which one is a hydrangea. When you know that, then it gives you a grip on how to deal with it. So if you're right and you have an assistant, who's giving you some trouble, find where that person is. You will have realizations, and you'll probably be able to get the person in and say, here, look at this. And that will move up to the next level eventually, and then you won't have that problem anymore. Or if it's somebody's at a very, very low level, you realize this is a bad situation, you get rid of them. So this helps you to find the upscale people, because you can spot them as upscale and bring them in your life, and find the downscale people and get them out of your life. Because all the problems in your life are caused by downscale people.
Thank you. Now, imagine that you are traumatized with a narcissist, okay, who is really amazing in certain aspects that you feel like, oh, that's so addictive, you just have to have them in your life. And on the other hand, you know that 99% of what they do really deeply hurts you on so many different levels, but you're traumatized. How do you manage to come out of those kind of narcissistic situations when you know, and according to your scale, yeah, you know, it's kind of even more obvious that they're bad for you. You should really get rid of them from your life, but you can't because you're like addicted.
Okay, if you find your level on all 35 scales, you will understand yourself in a much better way, and all of that powerlessness will evanesce. In other words, I see what I've been at level 4 on the scale of control. I'm going to move up to level 3. See, then you can control things better. Or I'm at level 4 on the scale of equanimity. That's not so great. And you move yourself up to level 3. Now you have more equanimity. So all of that stuff that you are dealing with dissipates when you understand yourself better. And the key is the specificity, because people who are upset are always in a generality. You know, like a person says, you can't trust women. That's a generality, okay? Some women can be trusted and some can be trusted more. That's the truth. So if you take a woman, you know, and you analyze her across these, you'll say, this is a woman that can't be trusted. That's different from a generality, as opposed to another woman who said, I can see this person is at this level. Okay, that's good. That's good. This person can be trusted, you see? So the specificity of finding exactly where the person is, both yourself and the person, causes these emotional problems to just go away because you understand. Let me explain something to you. When a person has a problem, it's always because there is a lack of knowledge. So let's say a guy's being audited by the IRS, right? Big problem. So what doesn't he know? He doesn't know what they're going to find. He doesn't know what they're going to ask. He doesn't know what documents they're going to ask for. He doesn't know if he's going to say the right thing. You see, this goes on. And he doesn't know, what does this guy know? Has this guy looked in this bank account? If he did look in the bank account, did he see that $10,000 deposit? You see? So these are all unknowns. When you use this system, the unknowns go away because you replace them with knowns. And when you know, you don't worry. Now, this doesn't mean that IRS is just going to stop auditing him, but he won't be worried about it. So he can deal with it in a rational, calm, effective way. You know, he might say, well, I can see this is a bit much for me. I'm going to bring in a tax lawyer to help me with this. See, if he's in a dither, he might not be able to figure that out.
That's interesting. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you and your books.
Well, I invite them to my website, which is septemics.com, SEPTEMICS. And there you can see what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself. And there's even a 15-minute pre-recorded introduction to Septemics, which explains it to a new person in 15 minutes.
Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.